Check this video out.
Left, right.
This is called dice stacking, and believe it or not, it's not a magic trick. There is no sleight of hand involved at all. It's simply purely a practice skill that uses centripetal force to keep the dice stacked inside the cup. It hit its peak popularity back in 2006, but surprisingly dates all the way back to the 1930s, where Tony Platt, a famous bartender and magician, would stack dice as a performance art. And while it has fluctuated in popularity over the years, videos on dice stacking are still being uploaded nearly every single day. And as soon as I saw this, I knew I had to learn it. But little did I know that learning this skill would be by far the most difficult and stressful task I had ever attempted on this channel. And it's probably not for the reason that you think. So without further ado, here is my journey into learning the art of dice stacking. On day number 1, I started off with research as always and discovered the two things that I need to learn this is simply a cup and dice, but not just any dice, specifically casino dice, because of their sharp edges and large size, which allow the dice to stack easier. So I bought these off of Amazon. I'll have a link in the description if you want to get some for yourself. They came in this gold foil, which was really fancy and kind of made me feel like a professional, which I am definitely not. But anyway, look at these things. Look how beautiful they are. Wow, like I opened these up and I almost became blinded by their beauty. Now, according to the dice stacking community, yes, those exist. They're all over the internet. Just look for them. An official dice stack is 4 dice high, but I'm going to be stacking it 5 high. Twice in a row with no mistakes in between in one single take. And once I do that, I can officially say I learned this skill. We've got a lot to do, so let's get started. So the first step was to simply actually pick up the dice and keep them inside the cup, which was a lot harder than I initially thought. But after about 5 minutes, I started to get it. Well, not really, but it's still progress. So I did what I always do, which is to try again, and throw after throw after throw. I would slowly become more frustrated, and the never-ending hunt for dice was just the beginning of my troubles. Having to get up every 5 seconds to pick them up sure did not help to boost my morale. Then, of course, I had a brilliant idea. I thought since I couldn't seem to pick up 1 dice, I should instead try 2. Results were as expected. As I failed again and again, I became confused and angry. But once I hit the 20-minute mark, I really started to pick it up. I was able to get 1 dice up easily and consistently, but the second dice was still not going to happen. But finally, at the 30-minute mark, it was starting to make sense. And just 10 minutes later, I got my first 2 stacks.
I was just watching a tutorial and I didn't even get to the part. Oh my gosh.
And now that I got 2 dice down, what's the next most logical option? A, keep practicing with 2 dice. B, go to 3 dice. Or C, stop practicing for the day. If you answered any of those answers, you're wrong. The right answer is to jump straight to 5 dice. It went how you'd expect it to. And after several failed attempts, I went back to just 2 dice. While I could pick them up, stacking them was still very far away. On day 2, I started off with just 1 dice to test out if I was still able to retain what I did yesterday. And to no surprise, I got up my first try, since skill retention tends not to change much after just 1 day. And then I slowly added 1 dice at a time, with my only goal being to keep them in the cup. I was able to consistently keep 3 dice in the cup, but for some reason the 4th one always gave me trouble. So I decided to practice getting an actual stack of 3 and not just keeping them in the cup. But here's the problem. I had no idea how this even worked. You see, dice stacking operates under something called centripetal force. So essentially, when you're actually picking up the dice and keeping them inside the cup, they shouldn't just be jumbled around. They should actually stay stacked the whole time, because the object moves in a circle and that makes the velocity change directions, which means we have an acceleration. And if we have an acceleration, we know according to Newton's second law, the net force, or centripetal force, not centrifugal, those are also 2 different types of forces, is a center-seeking force, which means that it will allow the dice to stay in a constant circle, which allows the dice to stay actually stacked inside the cup. So you're not really stacking the dice with the cup, you're just keeping them stacked. This is why the skill can be difficult to learn, because if you change up your speed from dice to dice, they're going to fall out. And surprisingly, this actually has nothing to do with gravity. That's why centrifugal force is not at play here, because centripetal force still works even in space. Seriously, check this video out. But I didn't understand this at the time, which is why I wasn't even doing the right things to get the dice to stack. I thought I actually had to stack the dice somehow, not actually just keep them stacked. So as time went on, I kept trying and was never able to be successful, and it made me very, very frustrated. And the crazy thing is I had already lost sight of the fact that the day before I could barely pick up 1 dice, and now I'm picking up 3 with ease. It just goes to show how when we're learning something, a lot of times we lose sight of the progress that we've made along the way. On day 3, I realized that not only did I not understand how the dice were supposed to stack, but my cup choice was problematic. You see, it's way too bendy around the rim. And to get the dice to actually stack, I need to slide the cup across the table as quickly as possible, but with this cup, it was just simply impossible. And remember what I said at the beginning of the video when I said this skill gave me an unbelievable amount of trouble? Well, it all started with this single hunt for a cup. So I headed off to my local Walmart and found, well, nothing. Then I went to the next store, and the next, and the next, and the next. And I found nothing but disappointment. And I know what you're thinking, you couldn't find a cup anywhere in your town. Well, there were plenty of cups, but they need to be straight edge or straight wall, which is the proper term, so that the dice can stack easily against the side. Now, I know that some people can do it with a cup that's not like this, but they say for learning it is almost essential. And so I began to go all over the internet and hunt for this cup. And day by day, I slowly realized that this was going to be much more difficult than I thought. You see, there were plenty of cups that were the ones I was looking for, but they were made of glass, and glass will break, so I needed it to be plastic. And then I finally came across something. A link on a Google image to a cup that was exactly what I was looking for. It was even titled Dice Stacking Cup. I nervously moved my mouse towards the link, and as the page loaded, I could feel my heart drop into my chest. And suddenly, there it was, the thing I needed, until I saw a little red sign that said, sold out. After this, I gave up, and I realized this video simply wasn't gonna happen. Well, that was until about 7 days after filming day 2. It was a day just like any other. I was hungry, so I went to the cupboard and pulled out a can of Pringles and started eating them. And that's when I had a revelation. This Pringles cup was exactly the shape of the cup that I needed. Now, originally I wanted the cup to be clear so that you could actually see how the dice stay stacked inside the cup. But at this point, I would take anything. And while I lost almost all ability to keep the dice stacked in the cup, I knew this would work. It was a huge relief. Unfortunately, this wouldn't be the end of my problems, but we'll get to that later on. I began practicing with the Pringles container, and after about 15 minutes, while I still didn't have stacking down, I was back to where I was on day 2, even though it had been about a week since I had done it last. I tried for the rest of the day, and still not a single stack was successful. As day 4 began, I realized that it was easier to stack dice when the table was flipped the other direction. I had more room to slide the cup, and it definitely helped, as soon as I flipped the table, I saw my first bit of success.
I didn't hear a fall. Here we go. Oh my gosh, I did it! Look at that! Look at that! I know it's only 3, but that's the biggest accomplishment I ever made. I didn't think it was possible first. Holy cow.
And after just 4 minutes, this happens.
Yes! 4! Oh my gosh, that's 4 stack. That's 4 stack.
My first stack of 4 was a huge accomplishment. Even though it wasn't my goal, 4 dice is still considered a standard dice stack, and I had finally done it. And I was by no means consistent at it, but it was still a huge leap of progress for me. But I tried again and again, and well, didn't quite see the same success. After a long time without seeing much success, I started to lose my temper.
Dude, stop launching the freaking dice all over the place or I'm gonna lose my
ever-loving mind.
But then, 17 minutes into practicing, this happens.
Okay. Oh, let's go, baby!
I had officially stacked 5 dice. This was a huge moment for me, and even though it was just half of my goal, after such a long, hard journey actually getting here, the tiniest bit of success felt absolutely amazing. And after that, I took the rest of the day off. I began day 5 with excitement as I was ready to accomplish my goal. And after some successful stacks of 3, my stacks of 4 were becoming more and more consistent. And then suddenly, disaster strikes again. I had lost one of the dice. I took apart my room looking for it, but never found it, and still to this day, I have no clue where it is. This poses a huge problem. My end goal was to stack 2 stacks of 5 in a row, which means I needed 10 dice, and I only had 9. And the issue is these dice only come in packs of 5, and they aren't cheap. And after this whole cup situation, I started to believe that I was destined to never learn this skill. I mean, how much could go wrong with such a simple task? I had already spent quite a bit of money on this video, and since I obviously don't make any money from YouTube, I didn't have a bunch more to spend. And with that, I scrapped the video idea and I walked away, never thinking about it again. But then, 5 days later, something arrives at my doorstep. I opened the package slowly. And to my dismay, a brand new set of 5 dice stood before me. I couldn't believe it. How did this happen? Who bought these? Who even knew I needed more dice? I honestly sat there contemplating if I even wanted to go back and try the skill again. But that's when I realized this was no ordinary mystery package. This package was sent by no one else than my very own sister. I had totally forgotten that she had been over a week ago, and I was telling her about how I lost the dice and how it didn't make any sense, and she could tell that I was visibly upset about it. And so, without me knowing, she ordered a whole new set of dice. And after that, with the support of my sister behind me, I knew I had to finish this. With a new attitude and drive, I sat down for one last time. I picked up the 5 dice again and again and again, and every time it would fall, until about 4 minutes in, I stacked 5 dice again.
Yes!
And just a few minutes later, I somehow do it again. And you could hear how much I was concentrating on this, as I barely even react when this happens. So I kept on going, and after many failures and so many stacks of 5 where I could only get 1 tower and not the second, I had finally built up the confidence to attempt my end goal for the very first time. I finally did it, and if that reaction seemed a little underwhelming, it's because I could barely believe it myself. I truly wasn't sure if I was ever going to learn this skill. But even though the last shot wasn't a beauty shot and it wasn't exactly in frame, I wasn't going to film again for a better shot, because I want this channel to be authentic as possible. And with this weight being lifted off my shoulders, I finally was reminded of why I do this. You see, that feeling you get when you accomplish something that you've worked really hard on, it's one you'll never forget. And even though this is the 3rd skill I've learned on this channel, I always lose sight of the fact that I'm going to accomplish it no matter how many obstacles are in the way. And even though it seemed like all the odds were stacked against me for such a simple task, I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. And even when I felt down and felt like quitting, I just kept on going no matter how frustrating it was. And that's the hardest part of learning anything. So just remember, it's going to be difficult when you learn something new, but you gotta push through it. Otherwise, you'll never make it there. So that's where my journey ends. And honestly, while I didn't have much fun making this video, I'm still glad I did it, because it reminded me that the most important part of anyone's success is the support of those around you. To know that there's going to be someone who's going to be there with you along the whole journey and will celebrate with you in the end. And yeah, you might have fights and disagreements or even periods of time where your relationship is rocky, but you're always going to come back around to those you love. So don't forget to tell those around you who you love how much you appreciate them while they're still here. And even though this is a skill I'm going to leave in the past and probably never do again, I'll be forever grateful that I did it. And not because it's a cool skill or an awesome party trick, but because of what I learned along the way.